So remember on Monday or Tuesday or whenever it was when I made a video all about kind of like some help and advice to overcome issues like depression and anxiety and so on? Well, it turns out I am quite the trendsetter because everyone's favourite channel, or at least my favourite channel, Girl Defined, recently made a video titled, well, let me just check this, 6 Truths for Overcoming Worry and Anxiety. Now, on the whole anxiety front, I've not really spoken too much about kind of my own personal experiences in that much detail, but I have had issues with anxiety in the past, and it has been very bad at times. But I'm in a really good place now where, like, you know, the panic attacks and things come like once every couple of months instead of every day like it was at one point. So, anxiety is something that I've dealt with a lot in my life for literally years. It's something that I still take medication for. It's something that I've seen counsellors and therapists for. It's something that I've read a hell of a lot of books about and done a lot of work on kind of like for myself, if that makes sense. It's something that I don't like to use to define who I am, but is still a really big part of my life, whether I want it to be or not. Like, there's no getting around that. And it's kind of like, I think it's a good, helpful thing for me to kind of embrace it and say, you know, I'm a person who has had issues with anxiety and sometimes still has issues with anxiety, and this is how I work around it, you know? I think it's a good thing. So, I was very, very interested by this Girl Defined video, because we all know they've had some very interesting opinions on stuff in the past, so I kind of wanted to see what they're doing with this. Now, I've not watched this video yet. We're going to be kind of watching it and responding to it for the first time together today to kind of see what the deal is, you know? I am a little worried that they're going down a kind of very similar road to the Psychic Twins, in that they're kind of been like, oh my god, mental health is like so trendy right now and like everyone's talking about it, so like we should totally do a video to like help people with mental health issues, and like we can totally talk about anxiety, yeah? Like, I'm kind of worried it's going to be a little bit like that, like the Psychic Twins did, but we'll see what it is. Maybe they'll surprise me, maybe I'm being too cynical. So let's just jump into it.
Hey guys, it's Kristen and Bethany here, and today we're going to be talking about 6 truths for overcoming worry and anxiety. Worry and anxiety is something that every single one of us deals with, probably on a daily basis, if not a weekly basis, because life is hard and there are so many unknowns about the future that we tend to revert to worry and anxiety instead of trusting in God.
Okay, so first up, I am feeling a little skeptical here because they seem to be equating worry and anxiety like as though they're the exact same thing. To me, they're very, very different. I agree that like worry is something that most people face on a very regular basis, you know, if not every day, like she says. Oh god, my microphone's not even pointing at me. My audio might have been terrible up to this point. Let me change that. There we go, sorry about that. I'll try and make it as consistent as possible. So anxiety and worry, they're not the same thing. To me, worry usually has an external cause, you know, like maybe you're late for work and you're a bit worried. Maybe you've got a big presentation coming up and you're a bit worried. Maybe you're going to a job interview and you're a bit worried, or you've got an exam coming up and you're a bit worried. Like, there's usually an external cause. It's a very like natural reaction. It might be like kind of butterflies in your tummy or like ooh, and it's usually a very short-term thing. It's usually, you know, you're a bit unsure about what the outcome of a certain situation or something is going to be, and you know you're a bit unsure about it. You worry. It's short-term, and then it's over and done with in a matter of like hours or days or even weeks or whatever, you know. And that's worry. Anxiety, on the other hand, like to me and to a lot of other people, and if we look at the kind of medical definition, is something entirely different. Anxiety is a lot more intense. It's like worry on a way, way, way bigger scale. It's like if worry is Pluto, anxiety is the sun, you know? Anxiety also tends to have more of a kind of internal or physiological cause. Usually it's something to do with your brain not exactly working correctly, if that makes sense. I'm being very vague here, I don't want to get too technical. But, you know, maybe your brain is producing too many of a certain hormone or not enough of something else, and, you know. And the effects, the outcome can be very kind of like physical as well. Maybe you get a shortness of breath, or your breathing gets really, really rapid. Your heart might be racing. It can feel like your head is screaming, or there's a pressure in your head. It can make your muscles tense up. It can make you feel sick, or in some cases actually vomit. I've been to a point where my anxiety has been that bad, and it's very unpleasant. Lots of things. It can induce panic attacks and stuff and so on. Anxiety is definitely more of a long-term thing. It's more of an internal thing. There can be external triggers, but usually is based on something that's going on in your body. Also, like I say, is more long-term, so it's not just like, oh, I'm a bit worried about this test. It's more like a general state of feeling constantly worried about stuff, but on a really big scale, if that makes sense. Like, I say usually, and I'm talking quite vaguely, because, like, it's very different in every person, and not everyone gets, like, every sort of symptom or whatever, and, you know, different people experience it in different ways. I'm just kind of, like, listing off a few things that me and people I know have experienced and stuff like that. But what I will say is that there is definitely a big difference between worry and anxiety. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with just making a video saying, hey, I'm going to teach you how to deal with, like, feeling a bit worried about stuff and feeling a bit stressed about stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that, and I think that's a very useful video to make. I think it's a brilliant thing to talk about. But I don't like it when you pass it off as, like, I'm going to help you with your anxiety, because anxiety is some kind of buzzword at the minute that gets you clicks. Like I say, the Psychic Twins are doing this. It seems Girl Defined might be doing this, and it does annoy me a bit, this idea of, like, almost monetizing people like me's, like, genuine health problems. It's like saying, oh, cancer's in the news recently. Let me tell you my cure for cancer. When you've never experienced cancer, you've never bothered to actually research cancer, you've never, you know, you don't even know what the real treatment for cancer is. You know, I know it sounds silly, but it's kind of the same sort of thing. Anyway, we're only 20 seconds into this video, so I'm sorry, I'm probably overreacting. Let's give them a chance.
And I remember a time in my life very vividly, actually, where I was so anxious and so worried that I was losing sleep at night. I was getting, like, rocks in my shoulders.
Oh my goodness, like super stiff.
Yeah, like the stiff necks, and just, like, my stomach was hurting. And it was actually part of my wedding planning process. I remember.
Sad.
And I take it all back. They've just proved all of my worries correct. Oh, I'm sorry, you felt a little bit stressed for a while you were planning your wedding, you know? I felt a little bit stressed and worried about stuff too, like when I was studying for my exams at uni, when I was working on a group project at uni, when I went for a job interview in the past, things like that. They do make you worry, and you can lose sleep for a night, and but it passes and it goes, and it's entirely different to living with anxiety. And like I say, there's a place on YouTube for saying, I'm going to help you deal with a little bit of worry and stress, and saying, I'm going to help you deal with anxiety. They're very different things, and I hate when one is passed off as the other, because yeah. It's like, seriously, like, oh, you were a bit stressed planning a wedding, and now suddenly you're qualified to talk about living with anxiety. No, I'm sorry, you're not. It's a bit offensive to people who do actually have issues with anxiety, I find. It's like you're just underestimating and undervaluing and undermining everything about what it's like to actually live with anxiety. I don't like it.
Biblical truth number 1, the same God who created you can be trusted with the details of your life. I love to just stop and think about that, because it's a truth that we hear, but we don't really pause and consider, like, wow, if I actually believed this, how would this impact the way that I worry in my life? You know, I would worry a lot less, because the very God who created me can be trusted with the small little details of my life.
Okay, for a first tip, I find this actually really interesting, because this is going to be, like, from a completely personal perspective here, but I found that a lot of the times when my anxiety was the worst, it was because I felt completely out of control of my own life. You know, imagine, like, when you're having a panic attack, right? I used to feel completely out of control of my body, and, like, you know, my body was struggling to breathe and do these, like, normal things, and I couldn't think straight. I couldn't do this, I couldn't do this, and, like, you feel out of control. And for me, what helped with my kind of anxiety overall was feeling like I was back in control of my own life and my own body and my own mind and everything like that. That was a big thing that really helped. So I don't think just passing responsibility off to a god is really going to help many people with actual anxiety, but that's just kind of a personal thing. Maybe it does work for some people, but I don't think, you know, it's going to be recommended as, like, official treatment. I think back when I was at my lowest point, like, being told, oh, you're not actually in control of your life or your future or meh, like, you don't get to decide what actually happens to you, I think that would have made me worse, I'll be honest. And seriously, like, let's think about this so-called amazingly benevolent, so wise and caring God who is supposed to, like, decide all the things that happen to us, and we're supposed to just put our trust and faith in him. He's the same person who apparently makes natural disasters happen and gives people cancer and kills babies. That's not someone I want to put my trust in, especially not when I'm already all anxious and worked up.
And number 2, worrying about the future hinders your efforts for today. So often, and I know I've done this, we're so worried about tomorrow and the next day and the next week and the next month and the next year that we're not even living today. We're not even fruitful for God today because we're so anxious thinking about tomorrow.
Okay, interestingly, I don't actually mind this bit of advice. I think it's pretty decent. I'm a big kind of advocate for mindfulness and this idea of kind of being very sort of conscious of where you are in the present. I think it really helps calm me down when I have had panic attacks in the past. And sometimes when I can feel my head kind of like building up, and I'll say to Dan, I'm feeling a bit crackly, because that's the silly word that we use to kind of like describe it between us. So like, I'm feeling crackly, and then we kind of like take a minute and we stop. And I kind of concentrate on the sort of present moment and everything that's around me, and it really does help. One of the things that I used to get very anxious about in general was my mind would race with all these like, what if this happens, and what if this happens, and lots of like worst case scenarios buzzing around my head, and it would feel a little bit like I was going insane because I was worrying that much, and everything just felt like it was on top of me, and there were all these bad things that could happen, and I didn't know how to cope with it all. So taking a step back and saying, actually, no, I don't need to think about this right now. Teaching myself to do that was a really big, helpful step forward in me dealing with anxiety. That said, sometimes I think it's good to kind of like take a look at the bigger picture and remember that you do still have your whole life ahead of you, and not everything's going to stay exactly the same as it is right now. Things can change and things will change, and you have the power to change them. I think that's a really important thing to remember. But again, you just kind of have to figure out what works for you and what thought processes work for you and what is best for you to focus on and what's unhealthy for you to focus on. And that's why working with a counsellor or therapist can really, really help, because they'll be able to kind of like advise you and figure out what's best for you individually.
Number 3, worrying is more harmful than helpful.
Well, duh. It's not like you can just stop it. Like say, oh, you know what? This panic attack I'm having, this isn't useful. I'll just stop. You can't just say that. It's not like it's something you have control over. And even when you're just having like a basic normal bit of worry, yeah, there are kind of coping mechanisms you can use and try and little techniques you can do, but it's very hard to just say, I'm going to stop this now. It's like me saying, oh, you know what? This cancer I've got is a little bit unhelpful. I'm just going to get it to stop growing. Or this broken leg, a little bit unhelpful. I'm a pro footballer and I could really use this. So, yeah. Stop being broken. Fix yourself. It doesn't work. It's exactly the same thing. When you have an issue like anxiety, you can't just choose to stop. It's very unhelpful being told, oh, it does more harm than good. It's like, you don't say.
So many people advising me saying worrying isn't helpful. It's not going to do anything. Be proactive, be productive. But at the end of the day, you just have to trust God. And so that's something that I am learning on a very personal level right now, trying to surrender all of my plans, everything to the Lord. Number 4, regardless of your circumstances, God promises to help those who trust in Him. It means that in the midst of the storm, in the midst of the hard times, in the midst of the uncertainty about the future, you're saying, yes, I don't know, but I'm trusting you, God, in the midst of this. I'm putting my hope in you. He knows. He's calling us to trust Him in the midst of the storm. And then in return, He promises that He will not forsake those who seek us. Yeah. He will give us that peace. He will give us that anchor, that trust in the midst of the storm, regardless of whether our circumstances ever change.
Again, I'm just going to bring up the dying babies, natural disasters, illness thing as this super helpful God. Thanks. And I mean, can I actually see some proof of Him actually helping people who ask for His help and like need His help and stuff like that? Because before I just put all my trust and faith in some unknown being that I've never seen or experienced or had any proof of, before I do all that, before I throw my medication out and just get down on my knees to pray, you animals, yeah, I'm gonna want some proof that He's there and that He actually has my best intentions, and that He can actually help me. I'm gonna want some proof before I just trust Him, because so far I've not seen any. And all this stuff that God has supposedly done or can do doesn't seem that great to me.
Number 5, God sees you and He knows exactly what you need. Now, this isn't what you think you need, because we are like this. We're like, God, I need this. For 30 years, I was like, God, I need a husband, and you don't know. He's like, no, Bethany, you actually don't. I have a different plan for you. You don't need that right now. You want that, but I have a better plan. And so often in our lives about little things, big things, like it could be something small and silly, like I need that shirt, or I need this guy to ask me out, or I need to get a good grade. We have all of these needs, but really God is saying like, no, I ultimately know what you need, and I'm going to use the circumstances in your life really to grow you and hopefully sanctify you to become more holy like me. And so it's so important for us to slow down and remember that.
Oh, for God's sake, no. I don't care if you think God has some bigger picture in mind or He's trying to teach you a lesson or whatever. No benevolent creator or benevolent God or benevolent ruler or like power or whatever if he was really benevolent, if he really had your best interests at heart, he wouldn't kill millions upon millions of people, make millions upon millions of people suffer and hurt and be abused or injured or die or whatever. No one would do that just to teach them a lesson or because he has a plan for them. If you're kind, you don't do that. I think here a better piece of advice would be to learn to be content, like, even when you don't get everything you want. So yeah, life can be crappy, and life can throw crap at you, and sometimes you don't deserve it. Often you don't deserve it. But sometimes you just have to know that things can get better, and you can make the best of a bad situation. You have the power to get through it and get over it, and come out of it a stronger, more amazing person because of it. And you can use what you've learned there to help others. Sometimes you have to look at your life and say, yeah, I'm grateful for these things, and these things suck, but this is how I can get over them. And everyone has the power to do that. Everyone can do that if they want to do that. And that's what I think is better advice than just saying, God has a plan for you all. It's saying, even when the crappy stuff happens, you as an amazing individual can make the best of it if you want. And it's hard to see that stuff or understand that stuff, especially when you have anxiety and you've got that little anxious grackle brain going on. It can be hard, but it is possible with hard work and dedication and someone to help you through it often.
Final truth is this: seeking God above all else is the antidote to worry and anxiety. If we truly and genuinely placed God at the front of our minds, trusting in Him, crying out to Him in prayer and saying, God, would you help me? My faith is so little, but would you strengthen it? Would you grow it? And you're reading God's word, you're praying daily, you're pursuing Him, you're outward focused. Those things, that's the antidote to worry and anxiety.
No, it's not. And this is such a dangerous thing to say. This is saying like, oh, if you have anxiety, the only cure, the best cure, the one cure you need is to pray to God. It's not. It's so dangerous because you're stopping people getting actual help. Maybe they need to work on some CBT techniques. Maybe they need to get medication. Maybe they need to speak to a therapist or counsellor. Maybe they just need to talk to their friends and have a support network there. There are lots of things you might need and might do, and telling people, oh, you just need to pray. And if you don't get better, you're obviously just not praying hard enough. Like, it's a dangerous thing to say, and it really annoys me. Actually, this is a really good point for me to just throw out a few recommendations for some of the things that helped me. So first up, I want to recommend 2 books, which I have here. The first one is Sane New World by Ruby Wax. Ruby Wax is actually a comedian, so this book is actually really, really engaging, really funny, and just very easy to read. But she talks a lot about the neuroscience behind issues like depression and anxiety. She talks about what's going on in the brain, why it's not exactly working properly. And she focuses a lot, I said that weird, she focuses a lot on like mindfulness and how that can help you and some techniques you can use. And this is a book that really, really helped me when I was at my lowest point. Another book I want to recommend is Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. This is one of my favourite books of all time. Again, it's very quick to read, very engaging, and it really, really helped me. It's a memoir by the author Matt Haig, and it talks a lot about his kind of time with depression, and I think a little bit anxiety as well. But he gives some really, really helpful advice of what to do in certain situations, what helped him. But he also, it's just a very real, honest, raw account of what living with depression was like for him. And I found reading this so relatable, so helpful. And like I say, it's a very quick read, so I thoroughly recommend this to everyone. Especially if you've never had kind of mental health issues, this can really help you understand what it's like for people who do have them. And my final little recommendation is a little bit cheeky because it's for BetterHelp.com, who you guys know I've mentioned and spoken about before, and who sometimes support my channel through the link betterhelp.com/Oates, where you can sign up for therapy, and it helps support me and my channel as well. But this is a genuine recommendation because I think BetterHelp is amazing, and I wish I'd had access to this a couple of years back when I was at my kind of worst point with anxiety and I was having these panic attacks every day and I was just an absolute wreck. One of the biggest problems for me was that I had this really bad anxiety, and I also didn't have much money at the time. So when I was spending money on counselling and therapists, it was quite expensive and it was swallowing up a big chunk of my money. And then some days I would get so anxious or have a bad panic attack that I couldn't get to my appointments. So I couldn't go get the help I needed, but I was having to pay for it anyway. So then I was worrying more about money and worrying about not being able to go and worrying about not getting help. And it was just a big, horrible, messy cycle. So if I'd had access to BetterHelp, it would have been amazing, right? If you're over 18, they're great. You can sign up and within 24 hours, you get matched up with a counsellor. If you don't like them, you can change, which would also have been very helpful for me because One time I ended up with someone I didn't like and it just made me worse and it was really, really bad. But with BetterHelp, prices start from like $35 a week, which is insanely cheap compared to some of the counsellors I was paying for. This would have been amazing. But also you can kind of schedule appointments and things like that 24 hours a day to work around your schedule. So again, I wouldn't have had to take time off work. And there are all these different ways you can chat with they're licensed counsellors and therapists. So they're proper people who can genuinely help you. But you can talk with them via text or phone or like a live chat on the website or a video chat or anything like that. So you don't even need to leave your house. So for me, sometimes just leaving my house in the first place was one of the biggest hurdles to get over. That was something I really struggled with. So if I'd have been able to speak to someone who could have helped me from my own home, I would have been sorted. Oh, I wish I'd had this a few years ago. I really, really do. Like, they're absolutely amazing. At this point, I do have to mention that they're not a crisis line. BetterHelp is more of like a long-term solution. So it's like you work with the counsellors and therapists over like a number of weeks and sessions to work on your specific issues, and they're amazing like that. But if you are feeling maybe suicidal, if you're in the midst of a panic attack, or anything like that, and you need help immediately, there are other people you can call. For example, the Samaritans are amazing, and I'm going to leave contact details for them and a bunch of other great resources down in the description below. But for now, I will just say, if you do want to try betterhelp.com, I thoroughly recommend them. They're amazing. And you can use my link, betterhelp.com/oats, if you fancy it. But, no pressure. So yeah, with that, I'm going to kind of end this here. This one has been a little bit of a frustrating one for me because, like I say, this is a topic that is very, very close to my heart and my life. It's something that I do still have issues with right now. And it's something that I am still medicated for now and have been for the last, 5 or 6 years, I think. And I do feel like people like Girl Defined and the Psychic Twins and so on are kind of trying to cash in on this, mental health trend and this whole idea of, put anxiety in the title and you get clicks. And the problem is they don't understand what it's like to live with anxiety, to have anxiety. And I think there is a place for them to talk about, dealing with worry and stress and day-to-day struggles. But it just annoys me when they try and claim oh, we're going to help you with your anxiety. When I'm like, no, it's not anxiety, it's different. So on the one hand, I personally don't like any of the advice that they give, but I also feel like it's not aimed at me. And I think potentially in this case, there is an audience for their video. I just think they're kind of marketing it and pushing it in the wrong place, and I find it a bit disrespectful. But that's just me. I'd love to hear your opinions and what you think of this video. The Girl Defined one, and mine, whatever you want, let me know. As of filming this video, my last video hasn't really been up very long at all, so I'm not going to do the shout out in this video, I'll do it in the next one. But still, let me know what you think of this. Let me know if you've ever lived with anxiety or any of the mental health issues and what you think of my advice, what you think of Girl Defined's advice, and so on. But yeah, no, I'm rambling again. For now, thank you so much for watching today. I really do appreciate you guys so much, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you so much for watching today. An extra special thank you goes to Gambit and his show for Deshawn, Mark Dana, Christian Berg, Rachel B. Royer, Jaden Shepherd, Jaylee Moore, Religion is BS, Sir Michael Moore, Tater Thoughts, Greg Ladd, and Pixelated Skeptic. And to everyone who has supported me on Patreon this month, a huge, huge thank you and hugs and love goes out to you guys. You guys are amazing. Also worth mentioning, if you like this video, you should subscribe because that would be really cool. I have merch available if you want to go check it out. I absolutely love it. And I also host a science podcast, which you can check out called The Here and How. That's me done. I'm going to stop talking. Thanks a lot, guys.